Have you seen Minecraft's new settings menu? Because it's so ridiculously ugly and the game is being filled with features that nobody is asking for, like this or slightly invisible mobs. The question I want to answer today is why? Also, in a world of parity, why are they making all of these changes to Bedrock exclusively? Well, let's investigate all of the changes that Minecraft have made this month, because as it turns out, I think I have the answer, and I also have the answer to why greater than 99.9% of house buyers happen to be blue aren't subscribed to the IBX Toycat YouTube channel. But for now, we're going to move straight into the history of how this all started to happen, because somewhere around the end of August, Minecraft started to make some very interesting changes. In particular, I'd like to narrow it down to 3. The first of these is sugarcane, the second of these is ladders, and the third of these were menus. Now, what is really interesting is the community reaction to each of these 3 features, because people loved the sugarcane change, and so this is a great way to see sugarcane from sugarcane. Transparency is good, and people agree with that. People really weren't that sure about the ladder change. This is something a lot of people said was just too jarring, and so Mojang decided to revert. But what's interesting is I saw not a single positive comment about the new menu spacing, where they decided to take all of the buttons and put them really far apart so you can barely see any of the menu options. No one liked them. I saw not a single positive comment, but they decided to roll both the changes to the sugarcane that was loved and the changes to the menu, which was hated, into the same update. They did decide to delay on the ladder change, which was interesting, but what's really weird is that since then, now that August has passed, they've decided to come back to all 3 sets of changes, and that's what they're doing in this September update. So just so far, just what we've seen in this immediate time, these sugarcane changes have been doubled down on by making it so that mobs become transparent when you get close to them. This is also true for glass, for what it's worth, as well as for stained glass. As you can see, this green stained glass becomes impossible to see when we get next door to it. But yeah, they've also doubled down onto things like mobs and leads. All sorts of entities are now transparent when you get close, which is actually a really good change. You don't need to see the copper golem when it's right up close, and you do see it enough even when it's, translucent, that you don't need to worry. I mean, even if we take the worst case scenario, let's imagine just somehow, right, that you end up with a situation where you've got a creeper. Let's just imagine that you have one of those nearby. Even when you get really close to a creeper, you can still tell, even though it becomes transparent. And so even though there are some horror stories about, like, what if the transparent mob kills me? I don't think you need to worry about it too much, and so I would say that this is still a good change, even as they double and triple down on it. But what's weird is they've decided to do the exact same thing for all sorts of other blocks, like, for example, ladders. Now, people hated the ladder changes, but they figured, they probably just disliked the way the ladders changed, and so now your FOV will widen when you go to a ladder. Honestly, it doesn't seem like it helps that much. Maybe it's like a 5% improvement, if that. But it does result in some really weird side effects for, like, okay, if you're climbing vines, I don't think most people expect to see it, but it also includes all sorts of other vines. So let's imagine you've got twisting vines, like you do in the Nether. Then randomly, while going into the Nether, you're going to see this weird FOV widen, and it looks like we're moving slowly, right? Just to prove a point, I'm going to walk consistently towards these vines. I'm not going to change my speed at all, and look what happens when we get close. It looks like I slowed down before lagging onto the other side. Oh, it's lightninging. That's fun. But it looks like I'm slowing down for this twisting vine, which I can assure you I am not. This is something that could be a life or death difference. It feels like the game is lagging as you move into this block, and that's just not good. So again, same changes have basically no upside, but lots of downside, and the same is true for the third set of accessibility changes they've made, because did you know Mojang changed the menu screen again? They figured it was such a good success when they moved apart all of these menu options that now they've done it for all of these buttons too. When you go to video, it takes you years, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but it takes you a while to scroll down the page, and that's even with our GUI set to larger. This is what the menu will look like by default now, and keep in mind, this is on my PC. This is on, this can be on a device that is running in 4K for all we care about, and we're gonna, you can see that despite that being true, it's still going to look very, very rough. And so, why is that true? The answer is seemingly not very clear. Mojang did not give. Oh, also, what does extra large new UI look like? It looks exactly the same. You literally can't tell the difference. But yeah, this is an ugly user interface no one wanted. Everyone specifically said, by the way, they didn't want, and yet it's there in the game. And what could possibly be the explanation for something so lame? Well, actually, I think there's a good answer. accessibility. But what exactly is accessibility? And that's a great question, and allow me to answer by using one of those very silly maps that claims to have the world's most secure house to show you what inaccessibility is, because this is a house that is deliberately very hard to get into. It's very, very tricky for me to get inside, and this is what is commonly true for spaces that you don't want people to access. You will make things inaccessible, kind of deliberately. This is very common for private dwellings, but we do the exact opposite for things that are meant to be public, like public parks or public transport, or indeed video games that are meant to be played by hundreds of millions. Microsoft and Mojang both have very good track records when it comes to accessibility because they want as many people as possible to be able to play their games. And so to give a good example of this, did you know that the emerald in Minecraft is bright green and called the emerald because they were going to make it the ruby, but they decided to change it because they figured colorblind players might have difficulties telling the difference. And indeed, as someone who has met multiple colorblind people, they can find it very tricky to spot the difference between things that aren't differently shaped and differently colored. So this is a really big bonus and big benefit, in my opinion, of changing Minecraft, making it a slightly better design overall. I like rubies, but I like emeralds more. But this is an example of game design, but there are also many things that they can add over the top. A great example of this might be certain players are very, certain players are hard of hearing, and so text-to-speech, certain players find it difficult to see, and so when you see this text here that says wheat seeds, that might be really tricky to read for some people on some devices. And so what Minecraft has is a text-to-speech option where when you read about, or when you hear about this coming up, you can enable that, and so it will say
wheat seeds.
There we go, like that. This is very handy because it allows people who have sight issues to play Minecraft just as well as those who do not. And there are so many different ways that Minecraft does optimize for people with issues. An example that is really niche but important to mention is the fact that the camera shake makes some people motion sick. If you experience motion sickness, having camera shake turned on is really rough, and so turning that off can be good. Actually, is the camera still shaking? It looks like it is. But view bobbing is something that really annoys some people, and so turning it off is great for many. This allows more people to play Minecraft. And so how does this link into the changes they're making to ladders and to the menu, and indeed to the other thing too? Well, basically, the simplest explanation is that Minecraft is working on accessibility of a different type entirely. As best I can tell, again, after looking into it myself, it looks as though both of these changes are there for mobile players, for people playing on phones, because right now, if you look at this menu, it looks like it's actually optimized to be used on a controller or with a keyboard and mouse like I'll do right now. However, keyboard and mouse and controller players are not the only Bedrock players. In fact, far from the majority. There are lots of people playing this on mobile, and think about how hard it would be to tap one of these tiny little toggles using your thumbs. This seems as though this is an accessibility that isn't necessarily aimed at disability, as many types are, but instead is aimed at, I guess unless you're calling Pocket Edition players disabled, this is mostly aimed at, people who are playing on specific devices, of which there are many on the console, many in the Bedrock ecosystem. And so as a result, why is Minecraft changing? My best guess, and the best guess of everyone in my comment section, seems to be that it's this, but I actually reached out to quite a few, I tried to reach out to as many anonymous Mojang sources as I could, and although no one was willing to comment publicly, I did seem to get the explanation that this is there for players with photosensitivity issues. So as you might know, you can go into your accessibility and you can change the glint of enchanted items or all sorts of other effects to make it so that you don't see as many flashes in Minecraft. But as it turns out, many people have issues with seeing, say, a menu option scroll past them like this that is helped by spacing out these buttons. It must have been some complaint that Mojang received recently because they decided to roll this out as fast as humanly possible. We're talking 2 to 3 weeks from when they first betaed these to when it was in the game, versus, again, we're talking about years for that new audio menu to roll out, which if I'm not mistaken, it's still not here for me. But you can see that this is something they have carefully considered for their new UI, is making sure that it won't cause any, seizures in that percent of play. I think it's about 1 in 4,000 people in the general population, according to Wikipedia, that do experience photosensitivity problems, and so that seems to be why Mojang has done this. And so this is, broadly speaking, good news, right? For 1 in 4,000 people, and then a small subcategory of that 1 in 4,000 people, the Minecraft menu is now usable slightly better without causing any issues, and personally I think that's a really good thing. However, I did have someone talk about, I got this comment saying, Toycat, I'm really glad you talk about accessibility, very few people do, but actually I would like to come into my controversial opinion on accessibility right after we talk about the fact that, like, okay, so this is absolutely necessary, right? Mojang have done this, but if they've done this, isn't there a really good question which should be, so if they've gone and done this, why exactly have they only done it on Bedrock? Doesn't this raise some serious questions about parity? The answer to this question is yes, because as you can see, Minecraft Java does not have any of this accessibility, whether that is coming up and down ladders, or whether that is the menu changing. As you can see, still in the video settings, you can scroll up and down and see all of these options as fast as you humanly like, which is a really, really bizarre decision, if you ask me. Why do I say that? Because after going through all of this effort, removing far too many features from Bedrock, not one, not two, not three, but dozens, it seems very strange that they'd go through all of that work and then not add certain features to Java. When you stand inside of sugarcane, it covers your entire screen. When you climb a ladder, it looks like that, and if you were to play Java Edition and have photosensitivity, it wouldn't help you at all. And so what is going on at Mojang right now? Honestly, it's really hard to be sure, because ultimately, if they're going through this much work and removing this many features for parity, while also ignoring the actual accessibility, then what is the argument at all? I mean, even better if we're talking about parity, why is it that after all of these years, literally we passed the 9-year anniversary recently, you still can't offhand items in Bedrock? This is what you can do on Java, have an axe in your right hand and torches in your left. That is still impossible on Bedrock. It's still impossible to use cobblestone, and any item that isn't one of the 7 approved Mojang ones. This is a form of parity that would be important, but you know, we'll leave behind the parity argument and talking about offhand, because I understand it's hard and they are presumably working on it in some form, and so instead we'll talk about what I think is the big end point in this video, because I want to talk about accessibility on a more broad point, which I think Mojang might be missing. Have you ever heard of the curb cut effect? As someone who believes in accessibility, I'm a big believer that all accessibility should have that in mind. If you've never heard of it, it is the simple concept that curb cuts, which are the American term for those little dips in the pavement that allow you to go down from the sidewalk to the road, you know, the curb cut is a really cool tool that is there to allow wheelchairs to go up and down, but actually most people don't think of them as being accessibility because they're so useful for every other user. Whether that's like a scooter or a bike, whether that's like a pram, whatever it is, getting up and down from the curb to the, getting down from the street to the sidewalk is really, really useful, and so as a result, the curb cut effect is used to describe accessibility that is good for everyone. Another good example of that would be the emeralds. I think emeralds look so much better than rubies, regardless of the color blindness fact, and all of the ways that Minecraft have added, say, button remapping, are really great for players who have no accessibility concerns at all, but this curb cut effect is something Minecraft should be considering when, say, redesigning their menus. I don't love the Java menu, but it is very efficient, it is very optimized, and it isn't, crucially, incredibly ugly. Making a game ugly and unbearable and awful for 3,999 in every 4,000 players just to make it better for the one is bad, and in fact it turns people against the very concept of accessibility as a whole. I almost feel like it's something you'd do if you actively wanted to get people to hate accessibility features, whereas if you design with the curb cut effect in mind, you'd think about accessibility that helps all players first and is very coincidentally good for secondary players. Do you know how I said earlier, like, oh yeah, if you were deaf, you'd love text-to-speech? Well, you wouldn't, but what you might really love is this Java feature that's been in there for years. It allows you to, it's got to be in, I guess, accessibility. There is the narrator, which is great for slightly blind people, but there's also closed captions, which might be subtitles? Is that the new name for subtitles now? Anyway, there's also closed captions, which allows you to see exactly what is happening, even if you can't hear it. This isn't just great for, deaf people, of which there are many, by the way. It's not just great for deaf people, it's also great for players who have their volume turned down to low, and because of the fact that it's directional, it's great for other players as well, who maybe just want to get a handle on those sounds they can't otherwise locate, and this is the curb cut effect in action. It's something meant for a small minority that benefits everybody, and this is an interesting reverse answer to the titular question, because why did Minecraft make these terrible changes? The simple answer would be accessibility. They want to make the game accessible for more players, but the actual answer is that they are implementing accessibility in a way that doesn't carefully consider the impact on the game. Take those twisting vine changes, for example. It's really, really rough to experience. Take the ladder changes. These are things that make everyone's experience worse to theoretically make some players better. People often say that it feels like Bedrock developers don't play their own game, and sure, they do sometimes post screenshots that are meant to be of Bedrock updates and use Java instead, but I think the real giveaway is when you have ugly changes like this implemented, where it feels like someone just said, yeah, we have a real issue with people using the menus, can you fix that ASAP? And they make the laziest possible change that technically satisfies that, rather than one that actually would make the game far better for end users. This is, in my opinion, why parity can be quite important, because sure, Jeb has basically doubled down on the never-roof parity issue, and we're never going to see true parity between the games, but the more the user experience reaches parity, the more you'll actually see Minecraft be playable not just by 99% of players, but by the other 1% as well. I do think that I would make a very strong case that it's important to have accessibility be well considered against the needs of everyone else, because otherwise you get a situation where people think that accessibility is the enemy, which isn't true, but it can be when it's implemented as poorly as it is on Bedrock. To end my rant, I want to say one last time that it's important that accessibility work for everyone, and when it's implemented well, it can. It just hasn't been so far. I hope that anyone at Mojang who is watching this video considers seriously looking at their game or listening to the community before implementing features like this one, so that we have a better, more inclusive and accessible game for everyone. With that said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. Like it if you liked it, share if you really liked it, and I'll see you in the live stream today, actually. Goodbye.